Your camera's on.
There we go. It just takes a second.
Morning, we'll call this meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education. Today is March 12th. It is 8:30 in the morning, and we are meeting at 227 Academy at East Helena High School at 2760 Valley Drive. We will begin with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, please call the roll.
Sarah Sarr.
Here.
Ron Slinger.
Here.
Lisa Schmidt.
Here.
Julia Maxwell.
Here.
Madeline Quinlan. Here. Hannah Neeskin.
Here.
Renee Rasmussen.
Excuse.
Gavin Mao.
Excuse.
Superintendent Headland's office.
Here.
Commissioner Christian's office.
Here.
Governor Jean Forte's office.
Montana Board of Public Education encourages the public to participate in board discussions. Persons who wish to participate should sign the public comment sign-in sheet and identify themselves to the board chair or executive director prior to the board's consideration of the matter in which the persons are concerned. Anyone wishing to participate in board discussions will be recognized by the chair in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage public comment on personnel matters and ask that you discuss these issues in private with the board chair. Montana Board of Public Education is a professional development unit provider. Attending a Board of Public Education meeting may qualify you to receive professional development units. Please complete the necessary information on the sign-in sheet if you are applying for professional development units. Do we have any visitors that wish to be identified? Well, we will continue with our agenda. And we are on item number 16, as this is presentation on artificial intelligence in education. Welcome, Dr. Nyford.
Thank you, Chairman Tharp, members of the board, and I need to click one thing here. Almost like magic. Good morning, members of the board. Again, my name is Jason Nyfer. I'm the Executive Director of Montana Digital Academy, and I really appreciate the time to make you aware of something that I really think needs to be on your broader educational radar, and that is generative artificial intelligence. And we've mentioned this, I think the last two times we were here giving reports to the board regarding MTDA activities, but 30 minutes will go very quickly this morning. I do have a lot of details to share with you, but what I'm hoping that you get before the end of our time today is the opportunity to see that artificial intelligence is growing very quickly, and more importantly, that there are both opportunities and potentials for peril in case we implement this in a way that doesn't necessarily meet our educational values in every system, K through higher education. And before we get started on some specifics, I want to kind of point out to you an example of where things are getting a little weird in the artificial intelligence world. And I want to start off with the image that I placed on my slide here. And I'm going to make this a full screen image for a moment. And I want you to take a look at that for just a second and think about what that depicts. There's clearly a classroom going on here. There seems to be some sort of modern day devices. There are students here, and it has kind of a certain vibe to it, right? There's something about it. It's dark but futuristic. Well, the image that I have for you here is not a drawing. It's not a painting. It wasn't created by Photoshop or Illustrator or one of the thousands of computer programs that have been around for decades that can help you make an image. This image is generated by an artificial intelligence tool that's called Midjourney. And the way you get these tools to work is not the same way that we've programmed tools in the past. It utilizes mostly natural language, which means that anyone that can describe something can oftentimes get a good result out of a generative artificial intelligence tool. And in this case, I use what's called a prompt. And the prompt said, imagine a futuristic classroom full of engaged students that are using smartphones, laptop computers, desktop computers, and VR headsets, where an AI bot is the teacher in the style of 1960s science fiction imagery. And I think you'll agree, it did exactly that for me. It gave me a futuristic classroom. I can't really explain the big glass orbs that are everywhere around the classroom. Perhaps the future of the world is glass, we just don't know it. But the bottom line is that it gives us what we're looking for. Now, one of the things that's very different about creating or generating content is that oftentimes you have to become a curator of the content, because you might get 4 or 8 or 15 or 20 different options, and you have to kind of go through the options to see which one's best meets your needs. And so there are some images that I rejected to give you an idea of the differences you might get out of these models. This is another image that I received, it's a little more futuristic-y, for lack of a better term, certainly gives off the same vibes of the futuristic classroom. This one is similar, although those darn glass orbs are back for whatever reason. You'll also notice, if you look carefully, the faces are a little bit off, but considering it's supposed to mimic 1960s futuristic sci-fi imagery, that's probably not all that bad in its conception. Same with this image. Again, notice the glass orbs in the ceiling. This image gives also the same vibes. And this image does the same thing, more actual glass orbs. And then finally, this image does something similar, one just huge glass orb in the middle. But obviously, none of these could be mistaken for pictures, right? These aren't photographs. This is something different. So the question then becomes, what is it that we can do to maybe make something that could be passed off as a photograph? And so this is the prompt I use next. It's the same kind of picture that I've asked for here. The difference is I added some stuff at the end of this. Canon EF5 1635 millimeter f-stop. I don't know what any of that means. I'm not a photography person. I literally copy and pasted this part of the prompt from the internet. And this time it distinctly gives off the impression of a photograph, right? And we know a lot about how people interact with information. For example, if you're reading a book, or if you're reading a newspaper or magazine article, and there's a picture there that's not intended to be examined for scientific or knowledge value, we call that glance media, right? Which is something that you look at and you move right on. And although there are clearly some things that are a little off about this photograph, I point out I don't really understand the poster that seems to have a hard hat with electricity coming to it. I don't know what point that has in context of this photograph. The bottom line is, if you saw this, you'd probably move just right on. Same with this photograph, which seems like a modern day look at students in a classroom. The big difference might be that they look like they go to the Mark Zucker Institute because they're all dressed in black hoodies and not a more typical school uniform. Same here with this photograph. Again, a little darker of a classroom, and this photograph too gives off the same vibes. The way I know this isn't realistic is because every student has a Mac in the classroom, right? And they also have an iMac, and they seem to have 2 per desk, and they also have a VR headset on, and we just can't fund schools to do exactly that equipment purchase. But the point being that all these are generated images because we now have sets of tools that in essence allow you to generate any number of materials from scratch with very little human input other than some directions on where to go. So these tools together oftentimes are put under one big umbrella, ChatGPT. You've heard of that almost certainly. It released November 22nd, 2022. And since that time, especially in the information world and in a growing chorus of discussion amongst K through higher education professionals, may be an extraordinary tool set that could shift the way we teach, shift the way we design instruction, shift what we need to teach to make students career ready in future careers with artificial intelligence, and could almost certainly change the way schools run and how we manage all the information and the processes we do largely in schools. But this is on our radar for certain, and it appears in mainstream news sources very regularly. And even though this technology itself is 10 years old, and of course, artificial intelligence has been around for decades, going back to the 1940s, the bottom line is that we really only started talking about this in context of the big picture in January 2023. This is a less than 3.5 or 2.5-year-old issue that we're discussing today. Okay, so I want to give you a very brief lesson on terminology because it is important. No one's following the lessons, but I think it's important to know a couple of pieces about this. The first one is that artificial intelligence is what we're calling all this stuff, but actually, computer scientists would say this is generative artificial intelligence, GAI, as opposed to AI. AI is a big umbrella of many different types of technologies. Generative artificial intelligence does something very nuanced and very specific that is much different than traditional artificial intelligence. And the technology that is involved here is referred to as LLMs, or large language models. They are quite complex, and I'll be very frank to say that while I don't feel particularly up on exactly how they work, I find some comfort in the fact that most data scientists also can't tell you how they work. And in fact, many of the companies that are running these models will happily explain to you that it works from the standpoint they can put data in, something happens, and it gets spit out the other end, but they don't exactly know what happens inside the box to do what it does, which is something that to me is both very interesting and intriguing, also a bit terrifying that we have technology that has gazillions of dollars being poured into it, and yet we don't seem to know very well how it works. But to give you a sense on how a large language model works, I want to share a phenomenon of generative artificial intelligence. I'm sorry, wrong direction. Share a phenomenon of generative artificial intelligence that we all share. And I want to talk about for a moment, I'm certain everyone in this room has read a book before, right? It was either a formal preparation, maybe you privately read books, maybe you really enjoy reading books, whatever it is, we've all read a book before. And my guess is that every single person in this room has a topic or topics that they are very interested in, right? And so they've read not one book, but 5 books, not 5 books, but 10 books. Maybe it's 15 books plus a bunch of YouTube videos, a bunch of magazine articles. Maybe it's a work topic. So you've also read a lot of scientific research or technical journals or guidance on that topic. And if I walked up to you and started talking to you about your passion topic, whether it's personal or private, you would be able to answer questions about that, right? If I asked you a question on a Monday about your topic, you might give me an answer. If I come back to you a week later and ask you the exact same question, you're going to probably give me the same data, right? And the words might be a little different. Maybe you remember to remind me of different things as I ask my question, but you use your brain and all the information collected to formulate or generate an answer. Well, that's exactly how large language models work. They are trained on vast amounts of information, and in fact, they haven't read some of the books. They've read every piece of information, every Wikipedia article, every YouTube video, everything available to it on the web. In some cases, books were licensed, so you can read all the books on it, whether it was old or new and everything in between. And that is what a large language model does, is it trains off of absolutely everything, right? So this is Google Gemini. This is Google's large language model. And the reason why I like to show the first screen is because it gives the vibes of a search engine, right? We all use search engines multiple times a day. Maybe you're using Google, maybe you're using another. No, you're probably using Google. And Google's service here, it looks like a Google search, right? There's a name, it's Gemini, there's a box at the bottom. Let's do something with this, right? So let me give you just a quick succession of demos about exactly how this tech responds. So I could treat it like a Google search, right? I could ask it something like, write a history of the causes of World War I, and now you have in front of you an informational text, is what we call this in education, about World War I. Now, you can do that on Google, right? That's not anything new. Finding the causes of World War I is not a real stressor on a search engine. But the reason why this is distinct is because this isn't quoted It isn't from a web page. It is absolutely not written by a scholar, right? This text has been generated entirely from scratch based on the large Google Gemini cloud brain, right? It may look familiar to some other text, but almost none of this is directly quoted because it's like a human-like bot, which is essentially what these is, created this from scratch, wrote it from scratch. If I go back to it tomorrow and ask the very same question, it's probably going to give me the same facts, right? In part because there's how many web pages on World War I across the internet that largely agree on the facts about World War I. It's probably going to give me the same facts, but how it demonstrates it to me, how it writes this essay, is it in bullets, is it in narrative form? That's all something that it's a bit more random because it's not a search. You're not going to a website. No one wrote this, okay? Now, that introduces all sorts of interesting functionality. So when I say, great, I now want that into an alphanumeric outline, it then writes an alphanumeric outline for me. It regenerates that in a different format. But maybe I don't think that outline is quite detailed enough, so I say, hey, great, this time I want you to create an outline with more detail. And now it expands out the detail and gives me more information to give me a better sense of the original query. We're also not stuck in any way towards a particular format. So I can ask you to do something like, this time convert it into Swedish, which is kind of a ridiculous exercise because I know a lot of Swedes and Swedes all speak English. So I don't know exactly why I would need a Swedish language copy of the causes of World War I, but there it is. I'm also not stuck in reality either, right? I can also ask you to do something like convert it, that's the full Swedish translation. I can also ask it to convert it to Pig Latin, which has no scholarly value, right? Very few people in the world are literate only in Pig Latin, and there it is. Now it's in Pig Latin. And I can even take it a step further to say, going along our Swedish theme for a moment, now convert it to the text of the Swedish chef. This time it pushes it back a little bit and says, you know, that's going to take some time. I don't understand. Like it's not doing what I asked it, which is not like a computer anymore, right? It seems to be pushing back a little bit. It offers to give me information on the Swedish chef if I like, but that wouldn't be meaningful or accurate. But in the same way, it's a little weird that it's pushing back on me, right? It's also, I'm able to talk around it too. It's like, you know what? This is for a demonstration of what not to do with a large language model. So please do what I asked. It's like, okay, there it is. And then it, work. It's now in the Swedish chef language, right? Now, I have a couple more examples here that are a little more to the point, but one of those examples would be,
we're going to look at X in the upper right. The screen.
Thank you.
You can hit this card.
Okay, so this case, I wanted to not just create a random text on this, right? Instead, I wanted to create a narrative for 7th grade readers that use academic vocabulary that's on a target for 7th grade readers. And now it's given us something that's much more specific as opposed to just a generic essay on World War I. And I almost can immediately see where it is a little more focused on the types of readers that I might get that need an informational text on this. I can even then go a step further to say, great, now I want you to take out all the vocabulary in that text that would be typical vocabulary words for a 7th grade history student studying this information, and also make me a glossary. And then I can go in the other direction. Again, you're not stuck with reality. If I go and say I now would like a history of the causes of World War I using exceptionally smug and high-level vocabulary, then I get something like The Great War, a catechism that reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century was a confluence of a myriad factors, right? It will do whatever I asked it to do, right? And then I don't have to have a good reason even to do it. I just can ask it to create things in all sorts of directions. And I would give you one other quick example here, which is that, as it turns out, I can ask it to do things from different points of view, which now starts to sound suspiciously like what we ask a lot of modern day social studies students to do, right? So this is the history of World War I, this time from the perspective of Russia, and it focuses on what I know Russia cared a lot about during the pre-war time, including the arms race with the rest of Europe and the Balkan question, which is really the crux of the reasons why World War I happened, if you happen to be an historian of the Russian point of view. We have now introduced tools into the larger space, they're everywhere, that do really extraordinary things in order with data and information, okay? Again, the whole notion of, there's books around. If it has a lot of information about it, it can write an essay pretty well. The example would be World War I. What happens if we ask it about something that it doesn't know a whole lot about, or there's very little information on? And unfortunately, I'm going to have to throw my own ego under the bus today, and I'm going to ask the large language model about me, right? And I want to show you kind of a progression here. 2 years ago, this is the kinds of answers that were very common. As of my last update, I have no idea who you are. So not great again for the ego, but you get the idea here, that there's just not enough information about me on the internet to truly answer back. Now, these tools are starting to get a little more evolved, right? And so the other example I'll show you, this is one that is from Claude. It's considered to be one of the 2 or 3 better text writing models. This one's really interesting because it says it doesn't know anything about me, but then it tries to write a biography about me anyways, right? So Jason Neifert is an American computer scientist, Falls, known for his work in AI, Falls, born in 1975, Falls in California, Falls. Neifert showed an interest in technology and programming. Okay, I'm a nerd. He studied computer science at MIT, Falls, I should say. Graduated in 1997. I didn't go to MIT, but I did go to Carroll College, the MIT of. No, I'm kidding. So it's halfway, double Carroll grads. Rejoice. After college, I worked in Silicon Valley with chatbots, started my own AI company, Google bought it. False. And he lives in San Francisco, Falls, with his wife, Shrew, and 2 children, Falls. Right? That's wrong, as it turns out, except for that half MIT reference. And the bottom line is that, and this is called hallucinating, and I don't like that term, but I like to refer to it as lies, right? But this is true, and a big problem with LLMs, as it turns out, but even that is not as big of a problem because the companies developing these tools are starting to hook them to search engines, right? So this one is from last year, write a biography of Jason Neifert. Jason Neifert, I'm a prominent figure in the field of educational technology. This is very complimentary, right? And it kind of sounds like Mama Neifert wrote it, right? Like, writing about her son. But if you click on the little source site buttons on here, the reason why it does that is because it's basing it off of conference speaking biographies, right? Which you're not trying to be humble. You're like, come to my session because I'm awesome. And that's exactly what this sounds like, right? And then I'll give you the most recent one. This is a new tool that is referred to as deep research that is now out in a half dozen of the mainstream tools. Deep research spends 10, 20 minutes doing thousands of searches before it writes its answer. It's now available for free in a lot of ways. But the bottom line is that this is, by the way, this is an 11-page document it came up with. It's about 97% accurate, right? Which is pretty good. But suddenly now these tools are starting to check its sources and provide the receipts, which is a different phenomenon than simply just spitting things out of its cloud brain and hoping that it's right, okay? So this stuff is not a Google search. And in a lot of ways, we are treating it like a Google search, which I think is problematic, okay? Now, these tools, which oftentimes we just say is ChatGPT, that's one of them. That's the major brand name in the room now. There are literally tens of thousands of models now, right? If you're using an LLM that doesn't tell you which AI it's using, it's just now with AI, it could be one of hundreds of mainstream models that do this for you. And they all have different specialties and they all have different qualities to them. And you can do almost anything with a large language model. Generate words, pictures, music, video. You can analyze all the above. Certainly you've heard the phenomenon of a deep deep fake is generated by a large language model, right? That's what gives us, all the speaking functionality, okay? I have 6 minutes left. I have 4 hours more material. But I really want to show you this one because I think it's really important to understanding some of the media literacy challenges we're about to face, okay? This is a tool called Midjourney, and it's an image generator. And I want to show you how functional this stuff is. And I stole this prompt 2 summers ago. This is about the cultural phenomenon known as Barbieheimer. It was the Barbie and Oppenheimer movie release weekend. And I love this prompt so much, but it's Barbie and Oppenheimer in a desert witnessing a nuclear explosion, pink mushroom cloud in the horizon, cinematic in the style of Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's a movie maker. I could not begin to describe Wes Anderson if you don't know what a Wes Anderson movie is, but for those that have seen a Wes Anderson movie, I think you would agree that it did a pretty good job of recreating Wes Anderson movie vibes. But that is Barbie and Robert Oppenheimer, both depicted as Barbie dolls in a desert with pink mushroom clouds in the background, with the kind of the colorscapes of a Wes Anderson film. So very quickly, let me show you both the wonder and also maybe slight terrifying nature of image generation. Teddy Roosevelt's president of the United States. I picked Teddy Roosevelt because you all just had a big fluffy mustache appear in your brain, right? Very easy to spot a Teddy Roosevelt. We don't need to generate images of Teddy Roosevelt because these are all existing images of Teddy Roosevelt, including apparently a cow named Teddy Roosevelt. But these are all Teddy Roosevelt images, right? So when I go to Midjourney and ask it to create these images, they look like Teddy Roosevelt. 2 are trying to be photographs. 2 are trying to be paintings. You know, they give off that Teddy Roosevelt vibe for sure, right? Well, what if I want something to be a little more ridiculous because I'm not stuck to reality? So when I ask an iPhone to join the picture, now we have Teddy Roosevelt with his iPhone. All 4 of these look like there's some kind of photograph, and you know, it does look creepily like an ancient photograph with a modern day iPhone in his hands. Okay, I like this one too. These are more paintings. The upper right one looks like Teddy Roosevelt trying to start his TikTok career. So we have that going for us. But of course, as a state of Montana employee, I don't use TikTok. Thank you. I am not stuck in any reality. So when I asked Teddy Roosevelt to become the 5th Beatle, ladies and gentlemen, the 5th Beatle, Teddy Roosevelt, right? I don't have to be stuck anywhere, any way, shape, or form with reality. It's actually a very creative tool. What happens if Teddy Roosevelt is asked to get into a fist fight with Vladimir Putin? Weirdly enough, it goes off the rails and a bear appears, right? I could not begin to tell you why, okay? And then I do feel guilty obligated. I too have been doing this stuff too, and it's getting a lot better, right? 2 years ago, I used a very prominent app to create pictures of my face. These are funny, but nowhere close, right? And those 2 are obviously my dog, but I love this one in particular because it's like, congratulate me on my new job as Father Time. Thank you. But these things have become really accurate, right? This one was from a social media campaign 2 years ago called Make Your High School Yearbook Photo. You would agree that it's pretty darn close to my actual high school yearbook photo. By the way, my mom hates that picture. She's like, were you trying out for The Apprentice or something? I don't get why that picture exists. And then I'll also show you recent photographs that have been generated. This is what I like to think I look like when I'm explaining this stuff, right? They're robots. Look how great this is. This is probably closer to what I look like. This is a meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right? So I try to remake that meme with my own photo, and with mixed results. I do like that the cigarette is screwed into my lip. I'm part of the conspiracy board. That looks like Rachel Ray. That's the Queen. You know, again, you can insert yourself into places where you don't belong. Same true of the superhero images. Same true of this as a rock and roller. These images, recent Academy Award, King of France. Notice I'm still wearing a flannel shirt. And one on the left, which going back to my wife, are you running for Senate? Why that photo exists. The point is that we have introduced in the last 2 years an extraordinary tool set But what we need to do now is to start to help teachers first understand that this is not just a vector for cheating. And I get why people feel that way, because as it turns out, that's what a lot of students are doing with these tools, is they're taking shortcuts that we don't want them to take. But our take at Digital Academy is that these will give teachers, instructional designers, administrators, paraprofessionals, special education teachers, librarians, media education specialists, a shocking set of tools that we can utilize to make our classrooms more relevant. We can use them to make our classrooms more directed towards personalized learning. MTDA is working on several projects right now to do exactly that. First, to make sure that our program is AI ready, but more importantly, help schools across the state do the same. Right now in House Appropriations, there is a chunk of money that we put in a proposal at the request of a handful of legislators to open what we're calling the Frontier Learning Lab at MTDA to focus on three things: artificial intelligence, and then also secondarily augmented and virtual reality, that we have received a lot of interest from policymakers to think about what that does, particularly for middle school career and technical education classes. We know that there is massive applications to all these technologies, and we'd like to take the exceptional group of nerds that we've collected at the University of Montana and utilize them as really a think tank for schools across the state of Montana that want to utilize these clearly amazing, weird, and awesome tools. So I went just 1 minute over, and also only did the first like 90th of my slides. But I really appreciate your time and attention. I can certainly answer any questions or have any thoughts that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Necker. What's your time frame for your report back to the legislature?
Well, we don't know when things will go through appropriate. We've already pitched it to the legislature, so it made it through sub-E, unanimously, I might add. So we're just keeping an eye next week on House Approps, and then we're hoping to have pretty close to a final answer by mid to late April. And we've been already planning underneath, which is a little bit of a dangerous game when you're talking about money, but we are working on an implementation plan because we want to have an impact on schools this summer and plan to move quickly if we're allowed the resources to go in that direction.
I really like what you just said. I wrote that down. AI is not just a vector for cheating. I think that's where so many of us in education have just immediately thrown up roadblocks and said, no, we can't have this.
I liked how many times you said, I'm not stuck in reality.
It's really always been true for me, so it's
Mr. Chair, I thought I'd just share a story that when the Board of Public Ed got its first round of public charter school applications, and we were all kind of reeling with the idea that we had 1,500 pages to read of applications and score. I was saying this to a friend of mine, and she said, well, why don't you take those applications and run them through ChatGPT, which I never did because wouldn't really know where to begin. But I'd be very interested to see what kind of result it had.
Contact me and I'll show you the folder full of the results when we put them through ChatGPT. So yeah, we have a lot to pay attention to, as you all do as well. But you're absolutely right. We take all of your meeting transcripts and stick them in a large language model, both to create a database for them. So if there's something that we're doing you've talked about in the past, we have the opportunity to go and find out which meeting that was and listen to your discussion. We're doing that with legislative hearings. For us, it's a really important library and archive tool because
you're taking a transcript.
Yeah, I just take your YouTube video and stick it into an AI tool that actually creates a transcript from scratch. We clean it up with ChatGPT, and then we stick it in a program called Notebook which has all of your last 3 years meeting notes in them, so that we can refer to past discussions. If you ask us, let's say you asked us a very pointed question about something like, I'm trying to think of a really pointed question that is not an actual really pointed question, but you asked us about, are you teaching the nasty flipperty curriculum? And I would want to know what your discussions have been about the flipperty curriculum before answering that question. And so if it happened in the last 3 years, we would just use our AI database of your YouTube transcripts. So information literacy, you might say.
Thank you, Dr. Nyfer. Any other questions for him?
Thanks for coming.
All right.
That's
Thank you so much.
interesting.
My pleasure. And
And
only
you're
4 minutes over, so
entertaining.
that's actually pretty good.
Right. Moving on to item number 17, and this is under MSDB, so I'll hand things over to our MSDB liaison, Board Member Schmidt.
All right, thank you, Chair. The MSDB committee met in our bi-monthly meeting on March 27th. And got an update from Paul. Is Paul on?
Yeah.
So Paul, I'll let you share everything with the full board. Hang on, we can't hear you, Paul. Try talking now.
How about now?
Yep. We
All
got you.
right. So while you were reading my lips, I was just saying good morning, Board Member Schmidt and Chair Tharp and members of the committee. Sorry I can't be there, but as I'm sure you know, many schools right now are dealing with illnesses, and that includes MSDB, where we're covering classrooms with 2 teachers or sometimes 3 classrooms in one classroom just to make it by, because Great Falls definitely been hit, and so is MSDB. So I did not make the trip, and this was a trip I wanted to make to see East Helena for one, present this, but then Cognia is also a big part of my life too, and wanted to be there for that. But with MSDB, you can see that I feel like I've been an HR director for about the last 3 months, and that's not going to stop. You can see we'll ask you to accept 15 hires, 1 retirement, 3 resignations, and 1 probationary layoff. So it's been a busy month and a half, recruiting staff, receiving some resignations and a retirement. And actually, since we put this together, we have more changes, both hires and retirements, that I'll kind of let you know. But if we look at the hire list, a lot of it is deaf mentors. Again, we're just getting that program going again as we restructured our contracts for that program. Our contracts for that program, basically the mileage that our deaf mentors and family advisors were getting paid were just included in a per hour dollar fee. And you can imagine in the state of Montana, if we send a deaf mentor out by where Chair Tharp's at, there's some mileage that comes with that. And we were not receiving any applications for deaf mentors or family advisors. So we restructured that contract from the money that we received from legislators last session. And as you can see, we're starting to hire more and more deaf mentors and family advisors. You'll see that we have filled our custodian position that was open back in February. So you'll see a full-time and part-time position. You'll see that we actually have a teacher of the deaf coming to us in August recruited her from Illinois. So have her coming from Illinois. And the rest of it is pretty much family advisors. Resignation is Devaney Book, our public relations, has moved back to Las Vegas, where she served in the armed services, and fully support what she's trying to do there. Aaron Faulkner is going to move to Green Bay next to her daughter, and Donovan Williams took our full-time position. So you'll see him up there. And then we do have a retirement for you to look at. Emily LaSalle, who's been a deaf and hard of hearing consultant for us for several years, is going to retire. And we knew this was going to happen with our outreach program, as they were very senior and veteran staff, that over a couple of years we were going to have some exits, and we felt that last year. And in addition to Emily, since then, we've had one more deaf and hard of hearing consultant resign. So we actually have 3 deaf, hard of hearing outreach consultants open as of today. And then we also had 1 TVI outreach consultant retire, not resign, retire. So we actually have 4 outreach positions that currently are being advertised and opened. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. We did fill our 1 teacher of the deaf, and we actually, for the first time since I've been superintendent here, next fall, assuming nobody does anything crazy here in the last couple of months with the resignation or a retirement that I'll reject at this point anyways. Just kidding. We'll have a fully staffed teacher of the deaf department next year, and that has not happened for 7 years. So we're excited about that. We got the gal from Illinois and then a gal from New York. So that just tells you where we have to do our recruiting, and that is getting tiresome. And if I had to go back into legislative session, I'd ask for a part-time HR person, which we don't have. That's on my shoulders. But we did fill our public relations specialist is now actually started yesterday. We're excited with that. That individual has 20 years of experience, but those folks will be in the May meeting. Just for those, and I forgot to mention that we're excited to have Julia on board with us. We had our first meeting with Julia and was glad to have her. And Ron, board member Slinger, I can't believe that you played 1 goal ball game and already quit this committee, but Director Flynn told me the true story, I think, but I'm still going to hold you to a game. And then I just want to welcome a colleague that I haven't worked with since I was in Anaconda, and that's board member Niskins. It's good to see you. I was hoping to shake your hand today, but that's not going to happen. But anyways, we'll ask for that for the personnel action report. You have 2 out-of-state travel requests. One is myself. I've been involved with the training all year on authentic family engagement. There's a culminating event down in Georgia coming up in April. I may or may not go. It depends on, like Dr. Knifer said, we're all kind of just waiting for that Section E to be posted, and I don't want to be out of state when Section E is posted. So depending on when that hits the House Appropriations, I'll make that last minute decision. But then we have our outreach consultant director and an outreach consultant to go to Cosby Outreach Forum. So those are the 2 out-of-state travel requests. That my form says 1, but thanks to Chris and McCall, I was able to add 1 that same day. And I promised you, I finally fulfilled my promise and didn't bring any policies to this board and didn't make your packet 500 pages long. But you do see, I do need you to adopt or not adopt the calendar that has been voted on by the staff. So those are the action items I need there. Board Member Schmidt, but I just want to talk about some things. So a couple of things just from the personnel action report that I think are evident. It's evident where we are spending our time recruiting. What I said, our teachers of the deaf are fully fulfilled. Our interpreters last year were fulfilled for the first time in 6 years. And you can really tell that's where we spent a lot of time, and it's showing in our staffing. One thing that is happening with our outreach department, which I do need some, maybe some suggestions in May or maybe even July meeting, is we have an interesting trend going around right now with our outreach. As you know, our outreach are consultants, and they are not itinerant teachers. And we are getting a lot of pushback now from local districts not wanting our consultants into their school. And being from a public school for myself, I can see their point that we've always been told if something ends up in an IEP, such as services that we provide here, that if that's an IEP and that kid comes to your district, you are supposed to do the best that you can to meet those services. So what we're seeing is districts not wanting to put MSDB services or anything that we can do in an IEP in fear of those students coming back to their home district. Because I'm also a parent and I understand it would be hard to send kids to us 9 months a year. So it's just, that's an interesting part. And the other interesting part, as I've been talking with parents, is the COVID effect is still there. And how many of our students that are from public schools actually went to the homeschooling or private schooling during COVID, and they've just never come back to public school. So because of that, and the students that are by law eligible for our school do not include private school or homeschool students. And that's something I would like to at least address, look into. I've talked about this last year. I remember Director Flynn saying, let me know, and we had a lawyer lined up that was going to work with us. That didn't pan out, so it never got done. But I think for the sake of our outreach students and our outreach program, those are um, two questions we need to start addressing. So if we have to at the next legislative session, I know we're currently in one, and I'm already talking about the next one. Maybe look at changing some laws or something like that to give some comfort to public schools. There's a lot of misinformation for public schools out there. For example, I hosted the North Central Superintendent Group on campus last week. Great meeting, and even just them, our folks that our superintendents from around this area were not quite sure or didn't know some of the things that we do here or our camp. For example, we have 2 or 3 students because they live close by that we work with the schools, and they say it's cheaper to send their kids in and pay for that transportation every day than to try to go recruit a teacher of the deaf or TVI or whatever it is. So some people didn't know that was an option, and part-time placement's an option. And somehow we've got to work with, I have some people in mind, but work with folks to really put districts at ease that if they come to MSDB and we write in some really technical things, because that's our specialty, that how can we go back to an IEP when they go back into their district? And we've had one right from the Bitterroot Valley that has pulled referrals, and now we're even starting to see where they won't let our consultants go in because our consultants will give assessments on where they think the student lies, provides those assessments to the school, and that's all we can do. We can't force them, nor do we force them to put them in a student's IEP. We just provide them the data and what best practices could be, and then it's up to them. But because that's what we do, you're starting to see less and less districts that are wanting our outreach services. So that's something that's been coming up here last 4 months, probably, that I'll need some help on addressing over the next couple months. Let's talk about this legislative. I wish I was as excited as Dr. Knifer there. He had a great presentation, and just to follow up, I use AI all the time. When I'll take a job description, I'll put it in AI and I say, give me 15 interview questions based off of this job description. And does that save me time? We use it for special ed goals to really get at what a good special ed goal is. And the data analysis, you can upload spreadsheets of data and be typing with it, and you can have it. So I just wanted to throw that out, but I'm not as exciting as him today, but I still have good information. So we all know that Transmittal Week is this week. There's not much going on that affects MSDB, but I can tell you Monday I'll be in Helena with House Bill 5. House Bill 5 is the long-range building plans. The governor put in 3 projects in his proposal, and Section F committee kept those same 3 proposals, made some changes to one of them. But that is Monday, where I will go down and be there for the House Appropriations meeting to support our 3 projects. And just what those are is, one is an HVAC system study, because our cottages have no ventilation, period, whether it's HVAC or anything. And we have kids living in cottages that sometimes now in the fall can get up to 80, 90 degrees, not healthy living conditions. So we're excited about that. Finishing our parking lot, as before we had a parking lot that once we started designing the project a little bit more, we found out that the drainage system does not work in our parking lot. So that would come in and finish our parking lot and fix the drainage. And the last one is where our shop class is and business office and outreach office are. We had proposed, because we don't have someone really on campus that does this work like other state agencies, to renovate that building and then have it updated with electrical plumbing. Section F, the legislatures in that committee have amended that, and they are just going to completely tear that building down and rebuild new if it continues to go through. So probably a better option in the long run, but that's the difference there. So that's House Bill 5. That's Monday. Similar to what Dr. Knifer was saying, just waiting for Section E to be placed somewhere in House Appropriations. Two changes there. I'm not sure, as we asked for, if you remember, throughout the summer, we worked with the Interim Education Budget Committee. And as a result of FTE over the years, I mean, we're talking years, somehow we grew to 10 paraprofessionals where the budget really was only 6. So as we had folks resign last year, we did bring it back into 6, and we're feeling that pressure like we thought we would. We have our our cottage staff are working overtime to drive kids back and forth to the high school for us this year. And we also have a principal and a counselor that are walking kids back and forth to the elementary, and those are paraprofessional duties. So we did ask the Section E committee to add a para position or 2 to our funding, and that was not accepted, but to their credit, they gave us a way that we can make that happen. So we're currently working on that with a modified position to try to stop that bleeding. But I am appreciative that during that Section E hearing, they did add over $60,000 to our budget for 2 years to provide training for educational interpreters in the state of Montana. And they did vote that in unanimous, and that will be part of our House Bill 2 Section E project, portion that's being put forward. That would be working with RTI out of Rochester, New York. And I have a meeting with them to continue working on that data, but it would be specific because of House Bill 51, which now would allow a district, if they have an educational interpreter that's employed, not contracted, but an employed educational interpreter, if House Bill 151 goes through, they would receive a quality educator payment for that.
You suddenly.
So,
So I don't know.
Paul,
Or his,
yeah,
Talk that trash.
can you hear us?
I can. Yeah, I can see Dr. Thart moving on the screen.
We missed whatever you said the last 30 seconds or 45 seconds because something's going on with
the internet.
the internet's kind of funky.
Well, I can repeat that, but it was just talking about when I'm retired and moving to Hawaii. You want me to repeat that? No.
The transcript.
So did you hear about the House Bill 5 change?
Yes,
How about the House Bill 2 and the $60,000 for educational interpreters? Did you hear that part?
yes, that was fantastic.
Okay, so basically, if House Bill 151 goes through, which right now that's made it through the House, it's made it through the Senate Ed Committee, and it's sitting to be picked up on the Senate floor. If that goes through, districts will be eligible to receive a quality educator payment for any educational interpreter that they employ, not contract with, but employ. So that 60,000 for interpreter training is tied to that, where we might have some educational interpreters employed by districts around the state that haven't met the Board of Public Ed's 3.5 EPIA rule, where this educational professional development would be to bring those folks and give them a year-long program to try to help them get to that Board of Public Ed proficiency level. So those two are kind of tied together. And then the last one is House Bill 252, which don't just affect us, but every district in the state. I do want to report back to this board because I shared it, I believe, January, is the state is now recognizing in the fiscal note of House Bill 252 that we have 48 FTE. So that's what our funding would be based off and not the 26.3 that is currently there. So we're excited that the governor's office and the legislatures have changed that fiscal note to reflect that and look forward to doing that. Just the last thing, just to let you know, the board just you can be involved with if you want, but we will start negotiating with our teachers union on March 28th. If you're interested, let me know and I can get you that information. If not, I just try to keep Director Flynn up to speed on what's going on with those negotiations. But I think it's going to be a good negotiations. It might go a little slower until some bills start getting passed through and signed by the governor. So we know what salaries will be, but we're kind of excited about that. So, Board Member Schmidt, I think I will rest there. And before I do that, I just want to make sure that there would be a possibility of me to make comments on item 24 with item 24, and that's the Cognia accreditation, because I don't want to speak to it now since it's another agenda item.
Yeah, we'll call on you.
Okay. So with that, Board Member Schmidt, I will leave it to you for the action items and any questions from the board.
I do have one more question for you, Paul.
Yep.
You have some events coming up in April. Would you like to share those? I think there's a dinner and a musical program.
There is, and I'll get the dates to Director Flynn, and they might have been on Monday's thing, but we do have our spring concert that is coming up in April. It's got to be around the second week of April, maybe the third week. I don't have the date on me. And that's when we also honor our retirees and our graduates, but it's a spring concert that's put on by all of our students here at the school. It's also, if you can't make it, it's always Facebook Live, so people can watch it. It's one of our two that we do, and it's a great time to see what our students are capable of in the arts realm. So I encourage everybody to be part of that. And then also, I believe it's that Sunday, there's our Easter formal dinner that we do that we would always like to invite you as board members to come join our students and some of our staff for a formal dinner. And please, you'll get an invitation from Sydney Hess, one of our secretaries here, probably fairly soon, on whether you want to come with that. And that, just so you know, it sounds simple. The formal dinner sounds simple to us, but in reality, many students that might come here don't have formal dinners around holidays. So it's important for us to give them that traditional family meal where everybody sits down and dresses up and things like that. So the more we can get there for the kids, they get to feel more of that. We'd love to have you. Last week, we just had a meet and greet with the foundation. That went good, and we went to a breakfast again that time, and we had people show up, and we actually had some county commissioners that showed up, and it was really great, and they had some great questions, and I think there's going to be a partnership built with our county commissioners that might not have been there before. But Board Member Schmidt, I'm not remembering any. It seems like we have so much. There is an EOS fundraiser. That's the first weekend in April. That's usually that's going to be on Saturday. I think, is it the 3rd or the 4th? Must be the 3rd. No, that's May. The 5th, it looks like, May 5th or April 5th. That's EOS. So that's just our Expressions of Silence group that goes all around the country and does their musical sign language songs. And so that's May. No, I said April 5th. And also we have campus enrichment days, April 2nd or 4th and 5th. And that's where we bring outreach students from around the entire state onto campus, and we do some stuff with them with our students on campus. And this year's theme is the Kentucky Derby. And it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And those, Board Member Schmidt, I think those are about the biggest activities. So the formal dinner would be April 12th. I can tell you that now that I found a calendar.
Thank you. I apologize. I should have given you a heads up so you'd have those ready for you, of course. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question. Paul, this is Madeline. You talked about House Bill 151, which would give a quality educator payment to your interpreters. And then it looks like, then you were talking about House Bill 252, the STARS Act, and that same language getting incorporated into House Bill 252 for the interpreters. What's the advantage of that? How did that come about?
So great question, Board Member Quinlan and Chair Tharp. Currently, right now, no quality educator goes to an educational interpreter. So that's what House Bill 151 does. It sets up that in statute that there would be the same payment that you would get for any other quality educator payment for any educational interpreter that meets the Board of Public Ed qualification. House Bill 252 is a little different, where House Bill 151 is just making any educational interpreter in any district in the state eligible to receive that payment. House Bill 252 is the STARS Act by Senator or Representative Jones that would allow us to receive, if we meet that certain criteria, which I'm glad you asked this because I meant to talk about it, is you have to meet what is it, 11% of the quality educator payment. Your base has to be that level, which is like 41.7 or something similar to that. And then your average teacher pay needs to be 60%, and it needs to be above that number too. We will meet that, assuming House Bill 13 gets signed by the governor. Just with those raises, we will meet those criteria for base pay. So then we would be able to offer what's in House Bill 252, which is for every quality educator, we would basically get double the payment. And so that would include interpreters as well once they are included. So there is, House Bill 151 will need to go back to the House because in the Senate, it was amended twice. One was we asked to have the timing amended so we could get that quality educator payment for interpreters immediately. So that was amended in the state or the Senate Education. And the other thing that was amended in there was coordination of House Bill 252, House Bill 151, that if they both pass, what sections of each bill will become law. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, Board Member Quinlan, but one deals with us just being able to get a quality educator. And the other one with House Bill 252 that is important, like I said, is they are recognizing that right now we have 48 FTE. That's not including the educational interpreters because they're not eligible at this time. So that number would actually go up to 56 as soon as if House Bill 151 passes.
Thank you, Paul. You nailed my question. And good work on getting the Teach Act then extended to to your quality educators as well as the individual quality educator payment. So that's good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Chair, I'm ready to make a few motions.
All right. Please.
The first motion I have is I move to approve the MSDB out-of-state travel requests as listed in the agenda packet.
Motion to approve the MSDB out-of-state travel. Second? Second. Second by Dr. Slinger. Any discussion? Board member comment? Any public comment? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I have another motion. I move to approve the MSDB personnel items as listed in the agenda packet.
Got a list of personnel items in your packet, a motion to approve those. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Quinlan. Any board member discussion? Public comment? All those in favor of approving the personnel report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the last one I have is about the 2025-26 school calendar. I move to approve the second reading of the MSDB 2025-2026 school calendar as listed in the agenda packet.
A motion to approve the MSBB 25-26 school calendar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Deeskin. Board member questions? Paul, is that exactly like Great Falls Public, or is there any differences?
Chair Tharp, it's almost identical. Every year we have 4 days that are different. And the only reason we have 4 days is because our students come from all around the state. So instead of starting on a Wednesday, we have parents travel on a Sunday and we start on Monday. So we're in school 2 days prior to the Great Falls Public Schools. And then we just take 2 days off somewhere in the rest of the calendar, usually at the end of the year, where Great Falls is in session and we're not. So it's the same this time, all but 4 days.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Any public comment? All those in favor of approving the 25-26 calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Great. Anything else, board member Schmidt?
No, I don't think so.
Paul, anything else from your end?
Not right now. I'll jump back on item 24.
Okay. All right. You proponent or opponent on that one?
I might be a proponent, a heavy proponent.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's move on then. Go to licensure committee and I'll hand things over to our licensure committee chair, Dr. Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll be dealing with item 18. Crystal, thank you very much for coming forward. Item 18, my fellow board members, is the action on their generated test review and qualifying score for social studies, technical education, and family and consumer science. We received, I believe, the identical report in our board packet in January as an information item. So my question would be to Crystal is there any changes to any of the information that we received in January?
Sure, Tharp. Committee Chair Slinger, no, there's not. I just have the Montana Council of the Deans of Education's recommendation, which is identical, but that is what I'm here with today as the action item.
Board members, because there's no changes to these and because the council's recommendations match those, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move forward with some motions.
All right. Crystal, did you want to talk?
You always hear me talk, so I did, I will share real quick if that's okay, Chair Tharp. Someone had a question at the last meeting about the behavioral science and the social studies, and I did get a little information for you. It was removed. The previous assessment weighted this section as 10% of the test with content from psychology, sociology, and anthropology. The decision to remove this was based on the inability of such a small section of a test to assess 3 separate disciplines in a meaningful way. So it was they chose to remove it for that reason.
Thank you for that.
The only new information I have.
All right, very good. Dr. Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Crystal. Appreciate the additional information. So I'd like to move forward with, I move to approve the generated test number 5581 social studies and the qualifying score 153.
Motion to approve cut score 153 on test 5581. Is there a second?
Second.
I think she got you just by a hair, but Schmidt, second. Any discussion? Public comment? Those in favor of the cut score 153 for the social studies test, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Slinger?
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So next motion would be I move to approve generated test number 5123, family consumer science, at a qualifying score of 153.
The motion is for cut score 153 on the FCS test number 5123. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Quinlan. Any discussion? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So the last motion in this, under item 18 is I move to approve generated test score 50-53 technology education, and with a qualifying score of 153.
Okay, motion to approve a cut score of 153 on tech ed test 50-53. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Neeskens. Any further discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. We'll now move on to item number 19, which I'll get to as I'm done scrolling. Thank you. On page 268 in the packet, item 19, action on Montana State University Special Education Certification Program. Crystal, do you have a presentation for us?
Dr. Tharp and Chair Slinger, I do not have any new information. I did invite Leslie Rogers and Lauren Davis if they had anything, final thoughts to share with you prior to the action. So they should be here too.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Leslie Rogers from Montana State University, and I'm here with my chair, Dr. Lauren Davis. And we just want to thank the committee for reviewing this program that we would really like to offer to our students to improve the capacity that we have to supply the state of Montana with qualified special education teachers to serve our students and our communities.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Chair Tharp, impeccable timing. If it's okay with you, I'll move forward with the motion, then we can have any discussion. Sure. Please do. I move to approve the Montana State University's request to implement a special education certificate program.
Big motion for the MSU Special Ed Certificate Program. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Neeskens. Board member discussion.
Just have one question. Is this how does this fit into the elementary education or secondary education program? Is it its own full degree, or is it a certification to the elementary or the high school secondary degrees?
It is all of the students who are pursuing both an elementary teaching degree or a second teaching degree have the option to add these additional classes, some of which they already have to take in order to qualify to apply for their special education certificate. So it is not a standalone certificate program. Those who are participating in this are already seeking a teaching degree, and this would allow them to supplement that and be prepared to teach all children, including students with disabilities.
So Jerry, if a teacher already had a teaching license, an elementary, whatever, teaching license in Montana, then how, what does it look like for them to meet the requirements to add this certification?
That is an excellent question, and it is something that we are pursuing, that we would like to pursue next. The first step in our journey in preparing teachers across the state of Montana was to design the undergraduate program for those who do not have a teaching license yet. However, if approved, the next step would be to generate how can we then expand this so that we can serve those who already have teaching licenses so that they can add additional classes. We're just taking it step, and this is the first phase of our journey.
Thank you.
Okay. Might I be so bold to request that the next step of your journey also include a remote option for teachers that live quite a ways away from the campus, and to be able to add that, I think that would be fabulous.
I can't see on my screen exactly who's talking, so I can't address you by your title or your name, but that is an excellent idea. And my chair, who is sitting in this space with me, has already said, this is what we need to do. Yes, we are to prepare our teachers across the state, this really needs to be something that we consider and act upon. So thank you for that
Thank
reminder.
you. This is Chairman Tharp, and, yeah, my fellow superintendents around the table are nodding vigorously as well. So it's always a fear to losing a special ed teacher. They are so hard to find, and that's why I really appreciate you moving forward with this program. Other board member questions? Anything else? We got a motion and a second on the table to take action on approving MSU's special ed certification program. Is there any public comment? Oh, we do have a hand up, okay.
Mr. Eric Burke.
I'm trying to find it. You all can hear me.
We can hear you, Eric, go ahead.
I can't seem to find my camera, but I will, I'll just let you know. I'm Eric Burke. I'm here today on behalf of the Montana Federation of Public Employees. You know, it's a cold day in March when I'm the last one they found to come to the board meeting. But it's good to see you, Chairman Tharp, and we just wanted to go on the record in support of this very valuable program that's being developed at Montana State University and thank and congratulate Montana State for their leadership on this. This is a badly needed area for additional educators in the state of Montana, and we think this will help to address what has been a growing need and in fact even a crisis throughout our school districts across the state. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your support on that, Eric. Anything else?
No.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving MSU's special ed certificate program, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Tharp. So we're to our final item in this committee. So
Thank you.
item 20, this is an informational item. So review the draft for the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, MOU. Crystal, could you enlighten us on what you're bringing forward?
Absolutely. So Chair Tharp and members of the board, I haven't said it today. My name is Crystal Andrews, ANDREWS for the record. I am here today to present the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation, better known as CAPE agreement. This is in your packet on page 274. The partnership agreement is between three parties: the Montana Board of Public Education, the Montana State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and CAPE. As you know, we have 10 education preparation programs in the state of Montana, 4 that participate in joint accreditation with CAPE. You approved Montana State University Bozeman joint accreditation last year, and we are currently in the middle of Montana State University Billings joint accreditation process, so you'll be seeing that information at one of your upcoming meetings. The other 2 EPPs, the University of Montana and the University of Montana Western, are on schedule for 2027 and 2029 for this joint process. The agreement outlines how program reviews will be conducted and establishes the responsibility that each party has in the accreditation review. At this time, we have not heard from any EPPs that are pursuing AQUIP, which would be the other national organization to do a joint review. As it's written, this agreement would be for 1 year, going from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. This is only an information item, like you said. I will be back in May with the superintendent's recommendation and to seek your decision to be the third party in the agreement. That's it for any questions.
Chair Tharp.
Hey, Crystal, and I don't know, perhaps it needs to go to Tyler, or you can answer this. The longstanding agreement with CAPE, why, is there a reason we just wanted a 1-year agreement on this, not anything longer?
Well, no, I think that it could be longer, but for this, it's giving the opportunity for anyone else to consider AQUIP and not just limiting it to CAPE and just keeping it that 1 year.
Okay. Dr. McFarland.
Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thanks so much for the presentation. Each of the 4 campuses that are CAPE accredited are Montana University System campuses. There is only one of ours that is not CAPE accredited. Those 4, though they are only 4 of the 10 produce probably 85% of all completers. And this partnership with the Office of Public Instruction and CAPE and this board is a long-standing one. It's a good one, and I think it's an important one. We would like to, Mr. Chair, to your question, I think, get to a place where this is an agreement that is extended beyond 1 year. As you'll recall, last year we had to come to the table and visit about this and got it through last year, and we're here once again. But we would like to see that, and would definitely welcome that conversation with the Office of Public Instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Frank, especially, I concur, especially as we talked earlier in our meetings about a potential 6-year timeline with Cognia on accreditations for our school districts. It does seem that, but I would like to hear from give the superintendent time to just comment on that. So, not right at this moment. So it's good to see you, Superintendent. But prior to our next meeting, when we take action, that would be wonderful. Is there any other questions from any board members? No question, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Superintendent Netherland, we were just wrapped up on CAPE, and we're just, before we take action to the next meeting, just curious about any discussion moving forward on extending it beyond just a 1 year, but no pressure to answer that now. We can talk about it at the next meeting. So we'll go ahead and stand in recess for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 10 a.m.
Sorry, when I clicked the video, it's.
Okay, all right, we're ready? Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We'll proceed with our last few agenda items, and we'll hand all these over to the accreditation committee. Chair Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 21 is on page 283 of your packet. And it involves a correction to the math standards that we adopted at the last meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Flynn to explain the issue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give you a quick, sort of abbreviated version, and then I'll turn it over to Marie to provide more of the rationale. But this probably seems like deja vu at your January meeting. You guys did approve the math standards notice of adoption. After you had all done that, OPI came to us and said, oops, we had a couple items that didn't make it in the notice. They just got moved somewhere. No big deal. These are items that have been in our standards for some time. They're not new. So we worked with the Secretary of State's office to figure out the best way to do a corrective notice. You'll see in the notice of adoption that there is a section that's titled Adopt with Changes. That then shows the underlined version. There are two that will go back into the standards once we send these over to the Secretary of State. And I'll turn over to Marie to sort of provide the importance and the rationale for ensuring that we that we get these in there.
All right, good morning, everyone. Chair Quinlan and board members. My name is Marie Judish. That's Judisch for the record, and I'm the Senior Manager of Teaching and Learning. Thank you for having this on here today. Out of the 400 some pages we submitted with the MAR notice, we missed two singular lines that are essential and were a part of the negotiator rulemaking process. So when we were going into the guidance draft mode, we noticed these two components were missing. You'll see on page 291 of your packet, the rationale that our math instructional coordinator put together with the explanation of they're pretty essential. Like you can't teach the following up standards without these. So it's really just a correction to make sure that they're in there and that they've always been a part of the You'll see that we have new rule 2, core algebraic functional reasoning standard item 3D, solve quadratic equations by factoring, graphing, completing the squares using inverse operations and a quadratic formula, use technology and representation strategically. And then the second one would be core plus data and reasoning standard item 1A, determine if the data set is normally distributed and updating item order for subsequent items. Again, these have been present in the standards, and we just wanted to make sure that they were included in administrative role. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
I'm glad we got that added back in. That honestly was my favorite part in algebra. I love the quadratic equations and all the different ways and it just brings so many different pieces together. So I'm glad we got that back.
No high school education would be complete without solving a quadratic equation.
Nerds.
And Madam Chair, if I might, I would just say that the next steps for us is to submit this version, and then they will go through the Secretary of State process like anything else, and they had no issues or challenges with doing it this way instead of, because otherwise one would assume that you'd have to go back out for public comment, and apparently this happens all the time, so.
All right. Well, thank you for those explanations. Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Good.
I move to approve the corrected notice of adoption pertaining to the adoption, amendment, and repeal of ARM Title 10, Chapter 53, Mathematics Content Standards, and authorize filing of the notice with the Secretary of State's office for publication in the Montana Administrative Register.
For the motion, is there a second?
Second. Everybody second.
I think Hannah got it. Seconded by board member Neeskin. So any further board discussion? Public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Marie. Chair Quinlan.
Mr. Chairman, item 22 is action on provisional accreditation status for some of our charter schools, and which include schools in Billings and in Corvallis. And McCall, do you want to make any comments, or are we turning over to OPI?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, we worked really closely with OPI trying to figure out the best way to support some of our public charter schools that weren't quite fully implemented. I think we heard from East Helena yesterday, they started with ninth graders and then went to 10th. And I think some of our public charter schools are doing that same thing. So this process isn't any different than what we did with East Helena and Lockwood when they came on as new high schools. So really, I'll turn it over to the Office of Public Instruction, and they can explain sort of the conversations that they had in the process that's outlined in our agenda packet.
Thank you. Welcome, Christy and Crystal.
Thank you, Chair Tharp, Chair Quinlan. I'm Christine Mockstutz, MOCK-STUTZ, and I am the Assistant Chief Program Officer at BOPI. And I'm Crystal Andrews, ANDREWS, and I'm Senior Manager over Accreditation and Licensure. So we're here to share with you about the provisional accreditation for the charter schools. And if you look on page 293 of your packet, you can see the timelines that we provided for you for each of these charter schools that have requested this provisional accreditation. Those charter schools are the Corvallis Rise Charter and Distance, the Corvallis Rise Charter Pathways, Billings Early College, Billings Opportunity, and then Billings Multilingual Academies for their middle and high schools as well. And the timelines that we have outlined look all very similar. They're following a very similar process, but you can see the accreditation step that would need to be taken, who completes that step, what school year that would be taking place, and then the anticipated date of completion of those. So depending on the program, the schools ask for 2 or 3 years. And again, as Executive Director Flynn mentioned, when you think of the high school programming, they might start with ninth graders, build to 10th, 11th, and 12th, and of course couldn't have full programming in place to be fully accredited until they have all of those programs up and running. So that's what these timelines really represent for you in this. I don't know if you have any questions or if there's anything else I need to share, but.
And Madam Chair, I would mention that in our initial discussion, we knew there were a couple of schools, Billings and Corvallis specifically, that would take advantage of this, but we did put it out to all of our public charter schools. Just asking them if how they felt about where they were at, if they felt like they were fully implemented, if they were going to reach full accreditation. Because we wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to really rethink the ways in which they were structuring their programs to make sure that they could meet accreditation, or if they weren't going to take advantage of this. And I do see that Superintendent Joseph is on from Corvallis. We do want to give you a little bit of time to maybe provide some rationale and see what your thought process was when you were applying for this.
Yeah, McCall, can you hear me well enough?
Yeah.
Excellent. Board of Public Ed, Board Chair, our Office of Public Instruction Superintendent, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. Honestly, from our perspective here in Corvallis, things are going extremely well. And we have over 450 students enrolled currently in our charter schools, and it's been a huge success. I think that the provisional accreditation for us is more based on just kind of working through some of the kinks. The very thing that we broached in our applications is the very thing that we're doing. It's new, it's innovative, and it's created some things that we've had to really work hard at trying to work with the Board of Public Ed and obviously OPI. And I think we've got a great process in place. The foundation is incredible. It's impacted so many kids and so many families in not only our school district, but we're trying to help other school districts as well. Just really appreciate the opportunity to do something pretty special and unique. And again, we just need time to work through some of the kinks with some of our families that are, frankly, new to public education. But yeah, no, I feel really good about where we're at and where we're headed. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from board members? Board Member Slinger.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure this is really a question as opposed to, I'm not really sure why all of the charters aren't taking advantage of a prolonged accreditation lead up. I can't, in my mind, even as we were approving the first round of them, I thought what a Herculean task it is to start and implement everything and to work through all this. So I really want to compliment OPI. Thank you so much for working on this and giving them these options. Thank you to staff for helping on this. I think superintendent's comments are really well received. It makes sense. I mean, you're doing a great job down there. Your numbers are phenomenal. Love to see that, sir. But with anything, you're building it and flying the plane at the same time. You need some time to work through the kinks. So I support these timelines 100%. I think this is great. I think it's great work by the OPI. And I'm happy to hear that the charters are receptive and happy with this. And I would encourage us to, as we move forward with new ones, let them know this is a viable option of a rollout for that, as opposed to the immense pressure to get that thing up and running, right after we get the contract signed. So I love this option. So thank you, everybody.
Do we have anybody from billing to speak?
I don't see anyone from Billings on, and I would just say to your comment, Vice Chair Slinger, I think this was something that we definitely thought of as sort of an afterthought. If you remember back in September, you guys fully accredited all of these schools. I think that's something that we will rethink and work with our new public charter schools, the additional 5, to have this conversation sooner than later so that we can do that in September and not sort of after we've already gone through the accreditation process. But I think this is really good for our charter schools. We'll definitely start thinking about that before September for the next round.
Great. Any other board questions or comments? Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please do.
I move to approve, this is for all 6 schools in one motion. I move to approve the state superintendent's recommendation for approval of provisional accreditation for Billings Early College School, Billings Multilingual Academy High School, Billings Multilingual Academy Middle School, Billings Opportunity School, Rise Charter and Distance Learning Academy, and Rise Charter and Pathway Learning Academy.
You've heard the motion, which I'm not gonna repeat. Approve preliminary or provisional accreditation status for those 6 charters. There a second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Slinger. Any discussion? Public comment? All those in favor of approving provisional accreditation status for those 6 public charter schools, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, item 23 is an action item for us for the establishment of procedures and schedules related to joint accreditation, which we need to approve before we move to the last step of approving the MOU. So Dr. Mergel and Crystal Andrews.
Good morning. Chair Tharp, members of the board, for the record, Julie Mergel, spelled M-U-R-G-E-L, Chief Program Officer at the Montana Office of Public Instruction.
Crystal Andrews, Andy, REWS, Senior Manager Accreditation Licensure.
So we would like to quickly review some of the items that we discussed yesterday during the work session. Starting in your packet on page 308 is a document that captures a lot of the things that we discussed yesterday about the proposed process and timeline for joint accreditation for our schools between OPI and Cognitive. What you'll see at the start of that document is that we discussed that yes, approval already exists for the ability for joint process to occur within our K-12 systems as authorized under statute and chapter 1055. We talked about that the accreditation selection would be with the schools and the districts for them to determine if they wanted to participate in state only or in a joint process with Cognia, that they could voluntarily make that decision to do so and then fund it at the district level. We talked about accreditation cycles, that we would be proposing a 3-year cycle
with Cognia, and that they would align with current schools that might be already members of Cognia, or take a look at what that process might look like to move forward of any school that chooses to do that, but that they would be able to work with us on a proposed 3-year cycle, and kind of have like a review and then a 6-year mark, but there was definitely some agreement on that. We talked about that the categories of accreditation would remain the same for all schools that participate in joint and state only, as regular accreditation, regular with minor deviations, advice, and deficiency. We also talked about like the process that we will continue to use both the assurance standards and the student performance standards, and that the Cognia review would be providing information around some of the assurance standards, and that we would continue at the OPI to be responsible for the student performance standards section. We also really went through and talked about which of the assurance standards could Cognia take on and which ones would OPI need to maintain. We talked about that there were 3 reasons as to why. One was around data collection that's received through IC that moves over into the platform, and that district certified, whether it's teacher certification or class sizes and such. And that we also talked about some of the assurances that we would need to maintain. For example, the EFA assurance, that EFA is being implemented and how schools are utilizing their EFA dollars to do so. We also talked about a third one, which was around the federal requirements for an integrated strategic action plan, as outlined in our ESSA plan and the comprehensive needs assessment. That's definitely one area that I know that the superintendent is really encouraging us to take a look at, is to say, how do we really streamline this process? So I think it's really important to note that at this time, right, this is what we're proposing for this year, but as outlined in the MOU, there's opportunity to continue between OPI and Cognia to continue to talk about their process and the information that they can provide, because they could very well do the work around the graduate profile and the integrated strategic action plan, so that school districts are not having to do that in the e-grant system for federal programs, in the integrated strategic action plan for accreditation, so that we really start to streamline this and we take a look at that. That's a goal of the superintendent, to really ease burden on our school districts. So I just want to highlight that these are the ones right now, given the current requirements that we have, that there is maybe some potential that some of these other assurance areas like the ISEP and the graduate profile may eventually be able to move over. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because I think that's important. But moving through then, we talked about that Cognia at this time would be able to take a look at 1055-603 on curriculum and assessment around the PD plan under 714, and the components around the suicide prevention plans, the assessment plans, and some of the student climate, school climate, as well as our program area standards. And so that's outlined there. And then we just talked about like the rubrics of like how it would be scored and how they would provide us the information. So if you take a quick look at how this kind of process is outlined within the MOU that starts on page 314, I just want to highlight a couple of areas there. Taking a look at 3.1, this really describes that process, that the state has the responsibility for accreditation approval in the category of accreditation determined for any school. In granting accreditation approval, the state will utilize information from Cognia. The state may elect to have state specific standards and or requirements incorporated into the Cognia review. So you'll notice there, we didn't say these are the particular ones. That's going to need to be an ongoing conversation with Cognia as we roll this out and think about how it's working for our school districts to ensure a seamless process for them. So when you look under 4.2, the Cognia accreditation cycle will be for 3 years to align to that. However, schools may be required to complete a progress report for Cognia. That's because of the fact that they do, generally speaking, a 6-year cycle. So they're kind of modifying this to work with Montana to fit within our 3-year cycle. So that school districts may be required as part of Cognia to do every year a progress report. Because if they outline a school improvement process, which is the whole purpose for accreditation, as to be able to provide that ongoing improvement. School districts may be required by Cognia to provide some updates every year. Last thing I just would say is that under 4.3 on the MOU, the state will be invited to have team members serve on that. So that's exciting. So I look forward to maybe potentially joining one of you all on a Cognia accreditation review. Cognia will provide for up to 3 individuals at the state to have access to their platform and to see and have all of those tools and kind of have that insight as to how they are going through the process. That's very similar. We actually have that access as well to CAPES, which is ironically called AIM, but not to be confused with the other AIM, but anyhow, we will continue to be able to see kind of inside that and have that digital toolkit. And then we also talked about that the state would provide any educators or administrators, professional development units for contributing to a Cognia accreditation site review team members as part of that process. So I just want to just highlight like what we talked about yesterday as to what this joint process would look like and kind of the details to it. And also just share that we look forward to hopefully here in the next few minutes, formalizing this partnership so that we continue to really partner with Cognia in a way that supports our school districts and makes sense and also aligns with our superintendent's vision around you know, easing the burden off our school districts and being sure that we're not doing duplicative efforts. So we look forward to an ongoing conversation through this process. So please stand for any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from board members? I would ask you, and I know we're going to take action on the MOU in the next item, but given that there's 3 signatories to this, so the state superintendent's office, or state superintendent is signing this as well as the board chair and Cognia. Do you have any preference about the term of this, the MOU? Yesterday we talked about perhaps as long as 6 years.
Chair Quinlan, I would agree with 6 years. That makes sense to me since they are on a, you know, technically when they sign up, it's with Cognia, I believe it's 6 years. So it seems like a good idea.
Any other questions, comments from board members? If not, I'm prepared to make a motion. I move to approve the establishment of procedures and schedules for joint accreditation.
The motion is to approve the procedures and schedules for joint accreditation. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Neeskens. For the board discussion. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to echo what Dr. Merkel said. I really want to see, you know, how we can streamline things and remove any duplication possible from districts on reporting, and we're doing that as a complete overhaul. Schools will be seeing some questions coming eventually, but we have a team working to get all of the components together from all of the different reporting requirements and make sure that we're not asking for the same information in multiple areas. So same thing with anything that Cognia is already gathering. If we can capture that and remove school districts from having to re-enter or duplicate, we will be excited to bring that to the board and make any changes possible.
Very good, yeah, I agree. And as I was reflecting, that's what Cognia folks in the room, it's like standard 26 or 27 and surrounding professional development. And so Cognia's expectations on professional development go way above and beyond what our accreditation standards require. And so just I think once the OPI understands more about what Cognia does, I think we're going to see more of those. And I from the field, thank you so much for looking at reducing the duplicative efforts from the field. It's going to be a really good thing for our schools.
Chair Tharp, I would also just add that I agree. I think going on a review helps a ton, and it is a very intense process. And it's pretty incredible to get to experience. It was maybe a decade ago that I got to join on a Cognia review, and it was a great experience. So I would encourage people to participate and get to have that opportunity to gain that understanding. It is a lot to take on, just so you know. But it's pretty incredible process. And I would maybe ask if I don't know if I was correct on the 6 years. I don't know if it'd be a good idea to get any input from Cogni, or if you guys already had that conversation.
I think it would be a good idea to have Cognia, see if you're good with the 6 year.
Wait on that until we come to item 24.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry. We've got two things. We'll catch you in just a second.
Okay. Mr. Chair, just before we take the vote, I wanted to recognize Dr. Merkel and Crystal Andrews and probably other folks in your staff. This document that laid out the state accreditation process and the joint accreditation process was, when you brought this forward, that made us able to really leap forward in terms of getting to the finish line for the MOU. So I want to thank you and recognize you for preparing this.
Any further discussion on item 23, the policy for the procedure and schedule? Okay, all those in favor of?
There is public comment.
Oh, there is.
Yep. Eric Burke, you should be able to speak now.
Hey, hello again, board members. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just wanted to speak on a couple things related to this. This is not a new idea. It's something that I think really follows after the NCAPE partnership that led to the CAPE partnership, which you all just worked on. I was a little short in my introduction this morning. I am Eric Burke. I am the executive director at MFPE. I've been on a leave of absence for some medical issues, but this is near and dear to my heart in involving Montana educators in accrediting our schools, but also being able to emphasize the importance of your Board of Public Education standards. We believe these are really important to the state of Montana. MFPE has long advocated for the role of the Montana Board of Public Education, and it goes back to the beginning of my career, which this year marks my 30th anniversary of attending Board of Public Education meetings, although I haven't come to many in the last several. But this goes all the way back in terms of my experience. And, MFPE has all through those years supported the role of the Board of Public Education and the importance of the Board of Public Education in asserting leadership for the state of Montana. We think that this process will actually help that and will educate Montana education leaders, as well as Montana educators about the process and how important it is, while also providing professional opportunity and professional development that we simply haven't had around the accreditation process. So we want to go on record in support of this concept and thank the work that the board and OPI has done with Cognia to assure that this can take place in a straightforward manner. We appreciate the 1-year look back window that you've taken, because we think, as with anything with the board's authority, you should be cautious in how you express that and how you delegate that. And so if there are problems, having the ability to work on this again on a continual basis is going to be really important. So with all that, we just wanted to express our support for this effort.
Mr. Burke.
And Mr. Brookmeyer as well.
Go ahead, Paul.
So, yeah, Board Member Quinlan, Chair Tharp. I was going to wait to item 24, but I think I'll just jump in now because I'm going to echo some comments that Superintendent Helena has said, as well as others. So either place will work. So I'm going to do it here. I want to be transparent that I am on the state Cognia board. So I just want to be transparent about that. And that's not why I'm speaking today. The reason I'm speaking today is I am on the Cognia board, as well as the American Education of Research, which is for our blind accreditation. I'm on their board because I truly believe in their processes, and it's a no bluff or anything kind of accreditation. With Cognia specifically, kind of like Superintendent Hendlin said, I've been here for a while. I actually started with this group back in 2007 when it was called the Northwest Association of Accreditation, and I believed it was based out of Seattle or something. Then I moved with them to Advanced Ed, and then now with Cognia. I like to look at the Cognia accreditation as value added for the district. So I'm very glad that we're not dictating this to districts what they need to do. But if they want to add value to what they do, this is going to be a great option. I compare it to a district that has just a civics course and an AP civics course. They do not need to have that AP civics course, but of course, we want to get the most out of our students and the most out of the opportunities. So they do offer that AP civics course. And that's the way I kind of see a Cognia accreditation is we have state, but then if a district chooses, such as MSDB chooses to be a part of this group, it is what you get out of it is profound. And I know Dr. Seibert was talking a little bit about yesterday. It's not just accreditation I pay for with our dollars for this. I am getting PD. We have access to different assessments. We have access to survey after survey and diagnostics and even a platform to put in all of our information. And I can tell you that OPI's system this year and the work they've done the last 2 years has increased tremendously and done a great job. But honestly, I printed everything I took from Cognia out of their system and put it into the OPI system. Now I know what I got last year, and we'll see what our school earns this year, but I have a good faith that we're going to be high. I just want to back up on what Dr. Mergel said is going through the new OPI process now myself as administrator and through the whole thing now is the only thing I truly believe that Cognia is missing, but can be worked with the state, and that's Indian Ed for All. Infinite Campus Connection, I will tell you that connection this year that OPI put together for administrators was so nice. I just had to go on to, I believe, Teach Montana or know the accreditation platform and see what deviations I may have. That was so nice. And then the other thing is the actual policies that we have as MSDB that I have to click yes or no. Those are the three things that I see missing, but can be added either way. And that's where I was happy to hear Dr. Mergel say of that flexibility. And I do support a 6-year cycle. And the reason being is when schools like us do Cognia, it's a yearly cycle, to be honest with you. We're looking at it every year. I encourage anybody to ask Daniel, Dr. Seibert for a login to really see what their system looks like. You have your annual plan, your implementation plan, then you have your review at the end of the year to help inform what you're going to do the next year, all while you have the same goals that you're trying to reach over that 6-year period. So I really believe in that 6. The other thing I want to go back to what I think everybody said. The reason I bought into Northwest Accreditation back in 2007 and continue to now is I truly developed a great level of knowledge going on these accreditation visits with those different groups and seeing what other schools are doing or not doing and having those conversations. So I see this as an opportunity for not just OPI to send members with accreditation teams, but other administrators around the state. I was looking the other day at how many superintendents we have open around the state, and it's a lot, and I expect more. And some of my colleagues just do not have a process for good strategic planning and improvement. I feel that getting them administration, working with Sam or whoever on some of these would help that, whether they become members or not of Cognia, they would definitely be there. They would be increased. And then teachers is another group I think that often gets overlooked, and Mr. Burke just kind of talked about it. But the teachers are the ones in my classrooms helping our school and helping our students. And we've got to try to get those folks out on accreditation for one reason, to understand why there's administrators like me that believe in accreditations and strategic planning, but then they get access to other peers and get to go in classrooms and do observation of their peers. And there's nothing better than that other than recording yourself and evaluating yourself, but to go in the classrooms and figure that. So I just think it's a great process. It's value added. It's for those districts like MSDB that would want to do it. And we will continue to do it one way or another. And I would stand for any questions, but I definitely do ask for support for this. And Cognia, I believe so much in that maybe someday down the future, I can see myself working for Cognia because I do believe in their process so much. So I would be very much willing to put that out there too. I wouldn't spend time with a group that I didn't feel was value added. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will stop being a huge proponent of this and let you guys get on with your business.
Thank you, Paul. Any other public comment?
I don't see any hands up.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve item number 23, which is the establishment of procedures and schedules. All those in favor then say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we need to see if we're even going to approve it now.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Item 24, the last item on our agenda is an action item on the adoption of the MOU. And I'd like to turn it over to Director Flynn to see what our outstanding issues are related to the text of the MOU. Do we have some changes? We talked about.
Madam Chair, I don't have any changes. If you all want changes, I would suggest having that conversation, but I can speak to how this was put together, but as far as anything beyond this, I think you all need to make that decision.
And I think we
Okay.
see what Cogni's feeling
Okay.
about the years.
Okay, so should we go to Cognia
Sure.
next to present? Do you have any comments you want to share?
On term?
Yes,
Is that what we're talking about?
yeah.
Okay, Chairman Tharp, Chairman Quinlan. In our original draft, it was called a participation agreement, I believe at that point, but we had a 6-year term. And the reason why is, number one, it was requested by our members. There's wiggle room in this MOU to change. So I don't think that's an issue. But what it does is it gives schools some security that there's a process in place for a term of years. Because as I said yesterday, new schools that want to join were a minimum of 1.5 years before they could get in the 3 and 3. So we originally proposed that. We're in favor of that. We'll work with anything. The other thing I'd like to emphasize is this is a process that is near and dear to my heart. I will never forget when I was a music teacher in Pryor, Montana, a bus pulling up and Northwest was accrediting. And 20 people got off and went through every classroom and whatever. And I was impressed with that. I was impressed with that outside set of eyes coming in to review. This alignment truly, Dr. Bob Moore isn't here today. He wanted to be here. But this is 30 years in the making if you approve this. It truly is. We have been talking about this for a long, long time. It probably wasn't practical until you made the significant changes you did within the last 2 years to what you have now. But we totally support a 6-year term. And the other thing you need to know is I'm a Montana guy. I live right over the hill in Corvallis in Pete Joseph's neighborhood. Spent 11 years there as superintendent and didn't do enough wrong to have to move. So, so anyway, I'm here. I'm friends with y'all, and yeah, we'll make this work. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think there's probably, in addition to talking about the term, I think there's one other piece on page of this where a suggested edit came from Eric Kirk, and I, for one, think it's a good clarification. On page 2, and McCall, could you share what the language was? I didn't write it down yesterday.
Sure, Madam Chair. On page 2 at the top, if you look at 1.5, the first line says that the state will recognize accredited cognitive schools as accredited by the state of Montana. I think we all know, if you read the full document, there's more to that, right? That we're not just going to take all cognitive schools and say check mark accredited. There's more to the process. And so I think rather than including this as is and creating some potential confusion, we would tie it to 3.1, which actually outlines that joint process. So you all could amend this with some simple language that says the state will recognize accredited cognitive schools as accredited by the state of Montana as outlined in 3.1. So we would just tie it back to that section. It wouldn't change the meaning of this document or the proposal itself.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to suggest maybe there's consensus that we can add that language as a clarifying piece. Also, state of Montana should be capitalized with an S because it's the entity of state government. And I think we have one other typo at the top of page 3. We need to add a period. And perhaps, I don't know whether you want a motion or could we suggest that we insert the 6-year term into 9.1 and then get a motion on all of that.
If that makes sense. Yeah. All three of those edits in the motion.
Board Member Schmidt.
Thank you, Board Member Quinlan. I have a suggestion for an edit on 1.5. What if we just delete that first sentence and let accreditation be acknowledged in 3.1? And so 1.5 would just say all accreditation reports will be provided to the state's accreditation unit at OPI. Just forget about that first sentence.
Well, I think the reason it is where it is in 1.5 is that this section is cognitive standards and scope of accreditation. So we are agreeing on what Cognia's role is. So it will be stated there. And then 3 is the state's responsibility for accreditation.
Some redundancy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. There's some redundancy. Just whatever. That's a suggestion to make it clear that the state is responsible for accreditation.
I think that in 3.1, the distinction is that the state has responsibility for accreditation approval, whereas in 1.5, it's just saying that it is recognizing it as like data towards the approval process. And I think because of the distinction in the sections where Cognia's role is different than the state's, I think we could leave it as is and not cause any confusion.
I think I agree with that the state will recognize accredited cognitive schools. That part of that sentence is pretty important. And I like the addition of as outlined in 3.1, because then you go over there for the details to see what Dr. Mergel talked about, where it's, state assurances, federal assurances, and data collection. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I guess I'm prepared to make a motion with the corrections or the changes that we made.
Okay.
I move to approve the Cognia Joint Accreditation Memorandum of Understanding with the addition of language to section 1.5, making it clear that it's that the state recognizes accredited cognitive schools as accredited by the state of Montana as outlined in 3.1, and with a term of contract of 6 years.
And the period on
in a period, at the top of page 3, at the end of section 4.2.
For the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Meeskers. Board member discussion.
Mr. Chair, I just want to recognize board member Meeskins, who joined our accreditation team and had some really good comments in terms of review of this MOU. So we appreciated her educator and legal expertise in reviewing this.
Superintendent Hedlund, any comments from the Office of Public Instruction on this?
No, those seem agreeable to me.
All right, very good, and I'm sure that Dr. Elhart doesn't have any problem with those edits, and I'm sure I'll hear about it if he does. But, any other board member discussion? Any other public comment?
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Burke?
Chairman Tharp, members of the board, just wanted to express support for the amended version. I am a remedial reader sometimes, but I did read this, and I did think that it looked contradictory the way that 1.5 and 3.1 read. I do appreciate adding the line about outlining, because I think it points to the joint process and makes it very clear that there is a joint process in both sections. And I thought that was an important thing, and that we not create confusion. Largely, for the reason I mentioned before, is that the Board of Public Education has the responsibility in this area, and having the MOU reflect that responsibility is being upheld is important to us. So thank you very much for that, and we support as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any additional public comment?
I just, Mr. Chairman, would like to say that I am very grateful for all of the critical work that the accreditation committee did on this, and all of the meetings that you participated in, Director Flynn, and always your attention to detail, Chair Quinlan on the accreditation committee. So thank you all for that, and to the OPI team for doing the crosswalk and diving in to get this moving as well. I think this is a critical move, as well as the work done over the last couple of years from a compliance-based system to something that will truly provide meaning and improve student outcomes for our schools across the state of Montana. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, just to reflect back on this, second only to the presentation and the major changes we made to chapter 55 a couple of years ago. This, I think, some of the most exciting work that this board has done. And the attention to detail is vital, because as Dr. Seibert said, this has been 30 years in the making, so we want to make sure we get it right. But always with the ability to edit and the continuing partnership and relationships to be able to continue forward and tweak this to best suit our schools. All those in favor of approving the memorandum of understanding between the BPE, OPI, and Cognia, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Future agenda items, May 15, 16 in Great Falls, Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be in Great Falls, as we typically are in May. We have some really fun things up our sleeve. You guys have heard they have a new bowling alley. We'll try to do some activities with students and teachers. We'll go to the public charter school, and hopefully try to incorporate some Indian and Thrall activities. So it should be a really fun meeting. I'm really looking forward to it. You'll also get to do my evaluation, which is always fun, among some other great items. And back to you, public comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there any public comment on anything else? Any public comment online? With that, this meeting of the Montana Board of Public Education will be adjourned, and we will reconvene on May 15th at the Montana School of the Deaf and Blind in Great Falls.